guys, it's Sam, and this is my spoiler-free review of Lore by Alexandra Bracken. This is a standalone YA fantasy story, more of an urban fantasy. It's set in modern times, and it follows the main character of Lore, and she is from a hunter family because in this world, the Greek gods are real. People in the modern world don't really know that. Zeus basically cursed them to be reborn every 7 years and to be hunted for 7 days because of some bad things they did. And these hunter families, who were sort of led or they're represented by, it's not really clear, these ancient Greek heroes, so like Jason, Hercules, Perseus, Achilles, etc. There's all these houses and family lines, and they hunt these gods because if they end up killing these gods, they get their powers, etc. Something tragic happened to Lore in her past, and she's basically lost her entire family, and so when we start the book, she is not a part of this, but gets roped back in when her former best friend, that is still a part of the world, ends up running into her at the start of this Aegon, which is the start of this 7-year cycle thing. And she also runs into one of the gods, and everything goes from there. So first off, this was one of my most anticipated books for this year. I haven't typically liked Alexandra Bracken's stuff, and so this was kind of my like final try at her books. So know that I went into this with like really high hopes because it was Greek mythology, modern day, sounded really cool up my alley. This does have trigger warnings for rape, gore, cancer, and pedophilia. So first let me get into the world building. This world is, like I said, modern day, but the society of the hunters, it does not feel modern day at all. So this is supposed to be taking place in modern day New York. We don't really have a lot of interaction with the modern world, and it's sort of explained away as like they've paid off people and no one pays attention. I'm like, I don't know, there's a lot of like sort of death and destruction and there's gods and all this stuff. Like, I'm not sure if I believe that. And also the hunter society is so incredibly misogynistic and patriarchal for being set in the modern times. I get that misogynistic and patriarchal things still happen, but the level at which it's happening within this society is bonkers for it being supposedly set in modern day New York City, as if these people wouldn't have been exposed to modern ideals and norms. All of the hunter societies are run by men. There's this belief that men should be the only ones that can take the gods' powers, even though some of the gods that they're taking powers from are like Aphrodite, Athena, Artemis, like women. But for some reason the hunter society is like, no, only men are worthy to take the powers. And so like that's a whole thing that's very odd. And there's even this god that was like a new god, someone who had taken powers, and she is a woman, and it's like it was horrible, and it's very weird for being, again, set in modern day. I almost feel like maybe this book started being written out as being in the past and then they just updated it. I don't know, because the level of misogyny and just patriarchal society, heavy-handed, is a lot for it being a modern day setting. And as far as the magic and the lore of this, again, shaky. Not a lot is explained. The way the society works isn't quite explained. The magics aren't quite explained. It's all very vague and kind of like thrown together at times. I'll get into that more with some of the character and plot stuff. So next we talk about our characters. Lore as a character was fine, but the thing with the characters in this book is they're so flat. They are so incredibly flat and one-dimensional. I don't get any sense of connection to each other. I would say of all of them, maybe I got more of a connection between Lore and Miles, who is her roommate, who is mortal, not connected to any of the hunter society, anything like that. They have a pretty decent vibe, I guess. And then her and Castor, who is her childhood best friend that pops back up. I guess there's also something there a little bit, but mostly not really understanding the connections between these characters. It's not really shown, it's just kind of like told to you. And there are other friendships that Lore has and connections and things that we're told like, oh, they're really close friends, and it's like, are they? Lore and Castor do have this like romantic tension thing, and while it wasn't my like least favorite thing, it also, I just didn't find myself caring that much, but they do have this like history, childhood best friend. The other thing is that motivations of characters change very rapidly and out of nowhere. Like for example, a couple of the characters are like fighting at one point and like try to like kill each other, or one tries to kill the other one, and it's like forgiven like 2 chapters later. Like it's very weird. Nothing is really addressed. The connections aren't believable enough for nothing to be addressed like this, and it's just, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. So flat, so one-dimensional, one note, bland, forgettable. Then we have the unforgivable offense, in my opinion, which is the most flat, one-dimensional villains I have probably ever read in my life. These villains are awful. Completely one note. So when our main villain, Wrath, gets announced, because he is one of the new gods, he's like the new Ares, and he's this bad guy, right? It is so heavy-handed because he's a rapist he's like murdered some past wives, and he's a pedophile because there's flashback scenes where he wants to marry Lore. This is shown very early on, not really a spoiler. Oh my god, making your villain be just really bad because he's a rapist and a pedophile, like, sure, yes, like a villain would possibly be those things if they're a bad person. However, when that's like all that they are, it makes like no sense, and it boils my blood so much when you make villains or any characters so one note. And the fact that all the characters in here were so one note made me so frustrated while reading this. Also, it doesn't make sense about how a person like that would rise to power because we don't really see this society, like I mentioned, and it is very misogynistic and like patriarchal. However, it's like this person that everyone knows is like a pedophile rapist and like has no redeeming qualities. How is he in this position of power? This makes no sense. Not only that, you don't get to see the rest of like the Hunter society. So we have our teenage characters doing all this stuff, and there's no mention of other adults. The only adults they see are these other gods or new gods. And it's like there are other adults in Hunter society, and we're not seeing any of that. We're just supposed to act like these are the people taking care of everything. I don't believe you. So ultimately, let's get to the plot. All of that stuff made me really not care about the plot because it was just like, this is just, and through the majority of the time reading it, I was like, this is going to be probably like 2 stars, whatever. But then I got to the end and I was like, what did I even read? Like, what was the point? Again, not that everything has to have a point, but like, it just felt so thrown together, so one-dimensional. Things were just done for the, like, to move the plot along. I don't feel like any of these characters had their own sense of autonomy or like they exist outside of the story. They just felt like cardboard cutouts that were moved around a board to get to a point, and that's it. And they had so many things that just didn't make sense. Their motivations, and because I guess also we don't know who they are, so their motivations like don't really make sense. The quick changing of moods and motivations don't make sense. And yeah, it just had so much potential because we have these, you know, gods and modern times and all this stuff, and it just felt so flat. Oh, and the last unforgivable offense is not necessarily that the characterizations of all the gods were like different, because it's okay, you can mess around with some of that. I'm okay with that, doing that with retellings and everything. But we have this world where there are like so many rapists and pedophiles, because it wasn't just the one. There's more. More men in power are rapists and pedophiles. Okay, I get it happens, but very heavy-handed. But then we have the king of the rapists, Zeus, as a character that basically every ancient Greek nerd knows. Zeus, trash. Like, he cheats on his wife and sleeps with everybody, and like it's just horrible. But we have him being presented as like a neutral good character in here. And not even necessarily like a character like he's more in the background, but like Zeus is the good guy. What? This I don't know. I don't have anything good to say about this at all, and I gave it 1 star. I'm filming this the day before we're going to be doing our House Salt live show for this book because this was our February book pick. We all thought we were probably going to maybe enjoy it. Not I. So I'll link that on the screen for everyone's kind of thoughts. I don't know how that's gonna go. And then I'm gonna be doing a gripe video because I have things to say about how I hated this. I know that I'm in the minority. I know a lot of people loved it. That's fine. If you loved it, you don't need to watch. It's fine. I hated it and I need to get it out. So I'm gonna do that. So I will also link that on the screen if you want to watch my in-depth thoughts about why I thought this was shit. And so because of this, I'm officially giving up on Alexandra Bracken. I have discovered over time, she's not for me. I've never really liked any of her books. I've definitely never loved any of her books, and most of her books have been 2-star below for me. So it's time. I'm gonna let her go. Even if she has really appealing synopses like this, no. She's not for me. She can be for you. She's not for me. So comment below, let me know your thoughts on Lore. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see all of you guys soon. Bye.